Hey guys, Tom here again from synthhacker.com and welcome back to another tutorial for Extra Record Serum. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at making this organic pad sound. Now, pad sounds are one of those sounds that are really transferable from genre to genre. So, like, typically you might hear like a bass sound, which is like just characteristic, recognizable, like electro house bass, or you hear this other bass sound and you're like, okay, that's like a future house bass, or that's a like techno bass and stuff like that. But the same can be said for like leads and other sounds like that. But pad sounds really are one of those really transferable sounds, and once you learn how to make them, you only really need to make slight changes to them to kind of tweak them to whatever genre it is that you're producing. So hopefully, no matter what genre you're into, you'll get a lot of use out of this tutorial. Typically though, I would say this sound is more suited towards this kind of like tropical or like deep house that's like really like organic sounding. That's kind of the vibe I was going for when creating this sound. But like I said, you can do anything you want with it really. So tons of stuff to get through in this tutorial. I'll try be as thorough but quick as I can. So we're just going to initialize the patch here and begin making the sound from scratch. As always guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com or click the link in the description below. I do have a Serum mega pack out at the minute which has over 600 presets included with that, which is a bundle of 4 different preset packs, sorry. So definitely go ahead and check that out if you haven't already, and also make sure you stay up to date with new tutorials that I bring out, but just simply by subscribing to the YouTube channel. That's a really great way to support me as well. But without further ado, let's begin making this sound completely from scratch. So this is a 3 oscillator sound. We're going to be using oscillator A and oscillator B, as well as what's going to make the sound really kind of organic is going to be the noise oscillator. Essentially, the things that kind of are contributing really to making this sound kind of organic, which is kind of hard to define really, but I'm sure you understand what I mean. It's just by using simple waveforms and also using an inharmonic noise source as well is a really great way to do it. You can either use one of the noise sources included in with Serum, or you can kind of use your own noise source as well, which I'd recommend playing around with as well. But so let's go ahead and set up our oscillator. So oscillator A, straight up, we're going to go for the saw rounded, wherever it is. Here we go. This is a really cool waveform or wavetable because it has the characteristic saw sound, but what you can do is have a lot of control over it. You can kind of give it more body to the sound by turning it left, or you can make it sound a bit harsher and sharper by moving the wavetable position to the right. We're going to put it about here, and we're also going to set up an LFO to modulate the wavetable position slightly as well. One of the key things that you need to understand when creating pad sounds is to try and create a sound or a texture that's slowly evolving and slowly changing. And a really great way to do this when using like a wavetable synth like Serum is making use of the wavetable position. That's probably one of the best ways that you can create slowly evolving moving textures, by simply dragging and dropping a slow moving LFO onto the wavetable position of the oscillators. And we're going to make sure that this is set to off and that BPM and anchor are on, because we're just going to set it to 2 bars. And we're also going to be using this LFO to modulate other things throughout the sound as well. The other thing we're going to do is bring up the unison to about 7 or 8. And bring this parameter down a little bit. This is really critical for pad sounds, just to really kind of fatten them up a little bit. Unison essentially is just the amount of voices that an oscillator is outputting, and then all these individual voices, as you can see on the screen here, are detuned by the amount that you choose. Typically, if you go for like a trance pad or something like that, you'd have them like a lot more detuned, but because we're going for something like more housey, we're going to have just like some subtle detune on the unison voices. The next thing we're going to do is also use our LFO here to control the panning, modulate the panning of the oscillator. And what we're going to do is actually make oscillator A and B pan opposite ways, this is another really great way to create movement in pad sounds by panning the individual oscillators across the stereo image separately. The next thing we're going to do in oscillator B is set up the harmonic subtle wavetable. Again, we're going to give this some voices of unison and bring the detune down a little bit. And also, again, we're going to set up our LFO on the wavetable position and also the panning of oscillator B as well. But we're going to pan this like opposite and in the opposite direction to oscillator A, just so we get even more like interesting movement. And then just make sure that both the levels are full as well. So far we just have this sound. Which is getting there, and you can hear some movement, but we've still got a long way to go yet. So what we're going to do is just go into envelope 1 here and increase the attack a little bit to about 600 milliseconds, and then just make the attack a little bit more linear. And also give the sound a little bit of release as well. Typically pad sounds have quite a slow attack. When the notes hit, you want it to sound like really soft and kind of like ease into the sound. And so just increasing the attack a little bit is a great way to do this. The next thing we're going to do is set up our noise oscillator. So we're actually going to use the inharmonic 8 sound. This is one of my favorite noise sources. The inharmonic noise sources that are included with Serum are really great for layering with pads, simply because they don't have any like harmonic content to them. So what I mean by that is like they're not like based on a certain key or note or anything, so you can kind of layer them on top of anything and not have to worry about, you know, whether it's like tuned with your sound or not, which is really great. And then we're just going to increase the level a little bit, and we're also going to use the LFO to pan this noise oscillator as well. So now we have this. And that's just really great to layer on top of the synth. The next thing we're going to do is set up our bandpass filter, which we're going to use for this pad. You can really use a variety of filters for pad sounds. Generally, you don't want too much low end in them, so I'd try stay away from low pass filters unless you're going to be EQing the low end out. But what we're going to use for this is just a simple high pass 12 dB filter. And what we're going to do is just bring the... Oh, sorry, not high pass, bandpass filter, my bad. Bandpass 12 dB filter, and we're just going to bring the cutoff slightly below half, and then we're going to set up our LFO again just to sweep through the frequency content of the sound. This is one of the best ways, probably second to, or even I'd say surpassing using the wavetable position to create like movement, is just using a bandpass filter with and then modulating the cutoff frequency. Is a really great way to make the filter just sweep through the frequency content of the sound and create that movement that we really like. So this is what we have now. Really cool, but what you'll notice there is that the noise now sounds a little bit too loud, so we're actually going to bring this down a little bit. The reason being is because we don't want this to be routed through the filter, but because of that, the amplitude of oscillator A and B is reduced slightly because of a lot of the frequency content being cut out. So just to kind of compensate for that, we're going to bring the level of the noise down a little bit. So now we have this. So the sound now is nearly there. Well done for sticking through it this far. The next thing we're going to do is just add a chorus effect, a reverb, and an EQ. So these are the only 3 effects that we're going to be using on this sound. You could definitely use external effects instead of Serums if you would prefer, if you've got like a favorite EQ or a favorite reverb. And the EQ won't make too much difference because typically there isn't too much difference between EQ plugins. I know that some people would probably argue with me there, but what you really can't argue against is that reverbs definitely have their own characteristics. So definitely, if you have a preferred reverb, use an external reverb effect instead of Serums, but for the purpose of this tutorial we're just going to be using Serum's inbuilt reverb. So we're gonna leave the chorus effect as is, and what we're gonna do is just increase the size of the reverb. We're gonna keep the mix of the reverb where it is. We're going to increase the low cut parameter here, and the reason for this is because we want to cut out like any low frequencies from the reverb. We're going to be using an EQ to do this anyway, but just to keep the sound nice and clean. And also just to take some of the harshness out of the reverb, we're going to increase this high cut parameter here just to cut out some of the harsh higher frequencies. Before finally then just add in kind of like a high shelf EQ and bring this up to about 290 to 300 hertz, something like that. And this is now our finished sound. And there you have it. Really nice pad sound. You know, hopefully you got a lot out of this. So just to recap, make sure that you're using quite simple waveforms. Definitely go ahead and try out using a bandpass filter with a filter sweep. This is one of the best ways to kind of create movement. Definitely play around with an LFO on the wavetable position, but also, you know, play around with different wavetables that you know, just kind of like experiment with some different noise sources. You know, maybe with some, maybe even introduce some other modulation. You know, you could set up some different LFOs instead of just using the same LFO for everything. Really, there's a lot of directions that you can go with this. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hopefully you got a lot out of this tutorial. Again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel to stay up to date with new tutorials that I bring out all the time. Also, again, if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com. Got tons of pad presets like this one included in my preset pack. Definitely go ahead and check that out over at synthhacker.com, or click the link in the description below. But without further ado, guys, thanks a lot for watching. If you have any comments, definitely leave them down below, and I'll see you in the next video.